For the best appreciation of Australian rowing, it's probably safest to turn to the 105th Dimboola Annual Regatta held on the Wimmera River every November. This country regatta is a very popular one on the Victorian Rowing Association regatta calendar and is attended by crews and scullers from both city and country clubs and schools.
Set of car keys that are set been handed in at the judge's box. Now that Mr. Dimboola Quest is in progress, if you're interested, and the final of the Women's Senior A4 is about to get underway. If this hot weather has made you thirsty or hungry, the store behind the finishing line has plenty of refreshment at reasonable prices.
The highlight of the day is what the Dimboola Regatta Committee proudly calls the World Sprint Fours Championship, over 800 metres. The final of this race is between Melbourne University Boat Club, the present title holders, and Essendon Rowing Club. The Dimboola Regatta is just one of many country regattas overseen by the Victorian Country Rowing Association.
Well, as these two crews race over the final 300 metres into Melbourne University with a slight advantage over Essendon, these boys from Essendon crew will get a good night's sleep tonight, as they've also competed in several pair-odd races throughout the day. We've got the presentation of the trophies for the successful crews and scullers soon, and I've just received a reminder of the square dance kicking off at 7 o'clock tonight.
The Boxing Day Regatta is held annually by the Nagambie Rowing Club, situated on Lake Nagambie.
The next event on the Nagambie Regatta program is the men's novice pair with Coxon. We hope all the competitors had a pleasant Christmas day yesterday, that these rough conditions aren't giving the Christmas turkey too much trouble. This strong northerly wind has made Lake Nagambie quite tricky for racing this afternoon.
There are, in fact, 20 country boat clubs in Victoria alone. And although travelling to them requires a lot of time and effort loading and unloading the boats and oars, the competitors always find the country trips worthwhile. Not least for the valuable points that can be gained for a club in the various premierships that decide the most successful boat club in the state.
The Yarrawonga Regatta Secretary has asked me to remind competitors to keep up their fluid intake to prevent dehydration from racing in this extremely hot temperature of over 40 degrees Celsius. The latest results from the cricket between Sri Lanka and Australia are just through. Alan Border has the situation well in control with 6 wickets in hand for 572 runs. Great scoring.
Over the past 15 years, schoolgirl and women's rowing has taken a firm foothold in the Australian rowing scene, particularly in Victoria, where there are over 800 girls competing in various categories and boats. The most popular boat is the Sweep Oared 4 with coxswain. In the head of the schoolgirls regatta held on the Bowen River, Geelong, over 1,500 metres, Geelong Grammar School firsts are the current holders of the first 4-oared championships. Demand for rowing has grown so much that racing in eights has been introduced. Indeed, this race, the final of the schoolgirl eights, raced over 1,500 metres, has become the premier sporting event for schools in Australia. The standard of these crews, and what many are aiming for, is not far behind the style, precision and strength shown here by the winning women's eight at the Seoul Olympics, namely the champion East German women's eight.
Final 350 metres of this head of the schoolgirls eight, it's Wesley stroked by Kathy Tolkerman, daughter of David Tolkerman, Olympic coach himself, with a small lead over MLC, then Geelong College and Morrison. But it's the Wesley first eight completing this main event in fine style and has won the head of the schoolgirl eight.
However, it is schoolboy rowing that is traditionally the strongest force in Australian rowing today. The GPS head of the river, held on the Nepean River outside Sydney, attracts one of the largest spectator crowds of any rowing regatta in Australia. This regatta differs from the Victorian APS head of the river in that it's raced over a 2-mile distance and includes 4-oared boats as well as the main race in the eights. To win ahead of the river is a much sought-after honour, and the favourite is this crew, the Newington College First Eight, who only a week earlier, as preparation, competed in the National Schoolboys Championship held on Lake Barrington, Tasmania. In adverse conditions, the Newington crew won by 30 seconds ahead of various schoolboy eights from around Australia. So it wasn't surprising that Newington College, experienced at handling tricky conditions, should be able to master the Nepean River in full flood and have a comfortable win from centre station. the Sydney GPS regatta as a keenly fought one, then there's no doubt that the Victorian APS Head of the River fields schoolboy eights of an equal standard, if not better. For the latter half of the 80s, Geelong Grammar School has dominated the APS Head of the River, a race that dates back to 1867. So how has the rowing technique of schoolboys today reflected the evolution of rowing over this century? Stephen Fairbairn, a former Geelong Grammar rower and coach, was a prime mover in formulating the basis of modern rowing by articulating a style that was adopted by many successful crews 50 years ago, including this winning 1941 Head of the River crew from Scotch College. Fairbairn's idea was that not only should the crew sit back at the end of each stroke, but also the finish should be very fast with the hands moving away quickly. Then when the crew comes up the slide or approaches the next stroke, this should be very slow and controlled. If the blade work is together, this will make the boat run or flow along. Fairbairn's slogan was, "Mileage makes champions," and this Scotch crew of 1941 followed it to the letter, putting in long training rows, thus giving them the edge over the other schools in the most important department of competitive rowing and sport in general, fitness. Fairbairn would be undoubtedly impressed with modern rowing because his style has been refined and smoothed out. Leg drive and strength has been increased by weight training. Also, boat speed has been accelerated by the high technology of modern-day boats and oars. Nevertheless, the elation of winning an APS Head of the River title has not diminished since this race began. For the successful stroke of the crew and captain of boats, Simon Tischendorf, his perseverance as a sculler in earlier years has given him the necessary skill to both lead the crew and to continue competitive rowing when he leaves school. The next challenge for an oarsman or woman who enjoys rowing and wants to continue is the National Rowing Championships of Australia. And this year, it was held on one of the best courses in the world, Lake Barrington in Tasmania. This regatta, the most important one held in Australia, is run over 5 days, culminating in the King's Cup race for men's eights. Over 400 competitors from every corner of Australia have found Lake Barrington to be a perfect location for rowing. Shielded by high mountains on either side, if the wind does get up, it blows straight down the course, making the conditions equal for everyone. So who are some of the most successful oarsmen and oarswomen in Australia today? This heavyweight senior A4 from Mercantile Rowing Club, with David Colvin as coxswain, has dominated the men's rowing for the past decade. The trio of James Tompkins, Mike McKay and Sam Patton have made up the basis for many winning crews that have occupied the presentation dais. Then there's Peter Anthony, winner of 27 National and King's Cup titles, along with Paul Reedy, have mastered both sculling and sweepboard rowing. In the lightweight department, we have longevity in rowing, which gives these four competitors a style and technical advantage over younger up-and-coming lightweights. Adair Ferguson from Queensland was previously a champion athlete before taking to the water in a single scull and quickly put Australian women's scullers on the map by winning the gold medal in lightweight single sculls in the 1985 World Rowing Championships. In the women's lightweight rowing, Melbourne University Ladies Rowing Club has dominated lightweight racing for the past decade. Pam Marshall, formerly Westendorf, raced in the Australian Women's Heavyweight 4 at the Moscow Olympics before trimming down for an equally successful career in lightweight rowing. But it's in women's heavyweight rowing that the centre of activity has shifted from Melbourne to the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra. The best senior A rowers from around Australia have combined to form an 8 that includes girls who won the gold medal at the World Youth Championships in Hungary in 1989, stroked by Courtney Johnson. Weather Bureau's worst fears are confirmed for the final day, the day of the King's Cup Regatta. A very strong wind is blowing straight down the course, making the racing conditions nearly treacherous. But this is the challenge of any good rower, to be able to master every condition. The Noel Wilkinson Trophy for men's interstate youth eights has rarely been raced under such adverse conditions. The President's Cup for interstate single sculls sees the continuing high degree of competition between Peter Anthony of Victoria and Richard Powell from Queensland. The day before, they had nearly dead heated in the National Championships. However, with a strong headwind blasting down the course, Richard Powell's extra weight comes to his advantage. For Peter Anthony, formerly a lightweight rower and sculler, a headwind is the last thing he wants to contend with. Blustery conditions like these are not always the case for the rowing of Australia's premier sporting event, the King's Cup. Last year in Western Australia, Cyclone Ned blew the entire King's Cup away and the regatta was abandoned. But good rowers can never be stopped, so a special unofficial King's Cup race was held on the National Water Sports Centre in Carrum between the states who cared to compete. No one could complain about these conditions, not least the coach Brian Richardson, who had rowed in 15 King's Cup races himself.
Okay, fellas, just remember South Australia will probably start very, very fast, so just keep relaxed, keep your mind in your own boat.
Victoria has won the King's Cup every year since 1985. Their race pattern is no different in the King's Cup this year on Lake Barrington. Once in full stride, clear out. rowing is good, relaxed, long and strong, sitting on a rating of about 36 strokes per minute. The boat running well in both calm and choppy conditions. Only in the rough water does the crew come forward with the blades higher so as to avoid hitting the waves.
And it's a very happy James Tompkins standing on the winner's dais, along with the rest of the successful Victorian King's Cup 8 to receive the King's Cup from the Governor-General of Australia, Bill Hayden, an excellent former sweep oarsman himself, who along with the enthusiastic crowd have enjoyed a rather windswept King's Cup regatta on this picturesque course here at Lake Barrington.
Once the National and King's Cup regatta is over, the selectors sit down and decide who should represent Australia overseas and in what type of boat.
Okay, fellas, I want you to keep working on square releases, deep back turns so that they're clean.
From then on, the Australian crews train once or twice a day for the next 5 months, incorporating weight training and other fitness and strength initiatives. Although the majority of the boating traffic on the river has stopped for winter, the Australian representatives are not alone in their early morning and evening training throughout the winter months. There are various student crews training for the Australian Universities Championships held in June, which culminates in the Oxford and Cambridge boat race for men's eights. For Victoria, there's also winter sculling races held on the Yarra River over 2,000 metres and the 5-mile marathon from Prince's Bridge up around Herring Island and back again. These are handicap races that are very popular, for as many as 80 scullers compete. So with all this activity and support, the long hours of training go past quickly for the Australian crews as they set off to compete against the best crews and scullers in the world at the annual FISA World Rowing Championships. FISA is the International Federation of World Rowing that oversees the smooth running of rowing for all members of the federation. The 1989 FISA regatta was held in Bled, Yugoslavia, one of the most picturesque lakes in the world. The standard of rowing is second to none. The competition is fierce. But at the same time, the international rowing fraternity prides itself on sportsmanship and fair play. and the camaraderie between the various nations is the healthiest of any sport. And so it's not surprising that when the Australian team boats, they are treated with both good humour and trepidation, because most Australian crews invariably reach the winners' final in their respective events. The majority of gold medals gained by Australia in world rowing has been at the hands of Australian lightweight rowers. The men's lightweight four, without coxswain, spent the winter training on the Yarra River. In fact, the Yarra has been the venue for many Australian lightweight rowing success stories when it comes to winning gold medals. Women's lightweight crews have been no less successful either. Under the guidance of such people as Barbara Gillett and Brian Dalton, every crew is a medal prospect, and the majority of lightweight women rowers come from Victoria. For all rowers and scullers, competing in a world championship every day is a new one, and squeezing in good training just prior to the start of racing is essential. The opening ceremony sees the colourful FISA flag hoisted in preparation for another regatta of excellent competition. The start is called in French, "Et vous préparez." However, the crews may commence racing the moment the red flag, held aloft by the starter, is released. If a crew starts rowing before the flag is released, the crew is awarded a false start. If the crew is awarded 2 false starts, it is disqualified and must leave the starting area. This rarely happens. starting movement is similar to that of a sprinter blasting out of the starting blocks. The strokes or steps are short and then increase in length. By 8 or so strokes, the crew or sculler should be in full stride. One of the important things about the start is that each stroke must be finished right through, so the oar handle touches or nearly touches the singlet before the rower moves on to the next stroke. The Australian men's heavyweight 4 without coxswain, coached by Reinhold Barchi, moves off the start with a rating of 42 strokes per minute before lengthening out to a rating of about 36 or 37 strokes a minute. All these crews power off the starting line like their lives depend on it. Fast, hard and precise. The hardest part of competitive rowing is getting to the finish line first. So after 5 days of heats, repecharges, semi-finals and finals, the top world champions are making their presence felt. Olympic sculling gold medalist Thomas Lang of East Germany seems to do it so easily. His gold medal is presented to him by FISA President of 30 years, Tommy Keller. But these championships are not without drama. Some swans have settled on the course for a closer look. The rescue unit is sent into action. For the Australian team, It's an average year. The double scull and women's lightweight four both come fourth, only narrowly missing out on the bronze medal. Where does such a large crowd come from to watch this regatta? The majority are local Yugoslavs, many from the nearby city of Slovenia. Others come from all around Europe and the world. Rowing is a very popular European sport. The crowds love to see excellence on the water, and no crew is a better example of this than the Olympic gold medalist from Italy, the Abinelli brothers, with Giuseppe Di Capua as coxswain. The last race on the world rowing calendar is the men's 8. West Germany, current Olympic champions, rowing with length, strength and powerful leg drive, sweeps across the finish line first. East Germany is second, and England just edges out the USA for third place. For Tommy Keller, FISA president for 30 years, this is to be his final presentation.
The British set up the Henley World Regatta on the Thames River over 150 years ago. Australian Henley was first held in 1904. It was so successful they held a second one in the same year. In association with the Zumba festivities, the Henley Regatta has rolled on undaunted, accommodating as many as up to 2,200 competitors, over 380 boats, over 180 events and 30 finals.
This archival footage from the old movie-tone newsreel shows Australian Henley at some of its grandest moments in the 30s and 40s. It was a Melbourne social event of major proportions, rivaling the cricket and the Melbourne Cup. And one of its many highlights was the fashion parade. In the modern rowing of today, the fashions are on the water, and for most part, soaked in sweat. But the trophies are still the the same, magnificent in every detail, and much sought after by the competitive rower or sculler.
Just famous for the Henley Grand Challenge Cup for men's 8. Another great race, with as many as 78 competing, is the Head of the Yarra, a 5-mile marathon that winds its way up the Yarra to Worston. The race takes about half an hour to row, and it requires not just superb fitness and perseverance by the sweepboard rowers, but also skillful steering by the coxswain. Well, not only does he or she have to avoid clashing with other crews, but has to navigate the crew around many tricky corners and through the bridges. All of these crews would like the opportunity of racing in the final of the Grand Challenge Cup, this year between Mercantile Rowing Club on the South Station and the University of London Boat Club men's 8 on the centre. Ladies and gentlemen, the Grand Challenge Cup is underway, and we can see the two crews now rounding the big bend in a closely fought race with Mercantile possibly 1 length ahead of the University of London. As the crews race down the final 300 metres, it's the strong Mercantile 8, 2.5 lengths clear of London. What a magnificent race, raced by James Tonkin, with a host of former Olympic and world champion rowers behind him. Mercantile have lifted their rating and are pushing away to a convincing victory in the Henley Grand Challenge Cup over 2,000 metres.
Without question, the best regatta a rower can aim for is the Olympics. Jan Popper, the man who occupies the 7th seat of the Australian Olympic 8, is familiar with top-class rowing. He shares the rare honour, along with several other members of this 8, of having won a bronze medal at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics and a gold medal at the 1986 World Rowing Championships at Nottingham, England. This 8, stroked by Steve Evans from Sydney, is probably Australia's best combination since the Mexico Olympics in 1968, when the Australian 8 won the silver medal. Nations try and build their rowers and scullers up over 4 years, so they reach their peak for the Olympics. The Australian quadruple scull is no exception. For these 4 scullers, each champions in their own right, combining into a quadruple scull is the execution of a 4-year plan. At the Los Angeles Olympic Regatta, the quad scull won the silver medal, only missing out on the gold by centimetres. They have spent 5 months together training in this combination on the Yarra River. Coach David Yates.
Each morning we did about 20 kilometres, rowing down into the docks in order to avoid the other crews. We trained for about 5 months. Basically in Melbourne, generally around 10 to 12 sessions a week on the water, as well as 3 gym sessions. The main challenge we faced was to mould the individuals into a crew. Everyone started with different styles, and the thing was to get to row together smoothly. The long and hard training is worth it because the reward for the crew is the experience of competing in the 24th Olympiad in Seoul. Although this experience may be satisfying, and they may have achieved their first goal in getting there, they still have 3 other major goals to achieve. Namely, getting through the heat, the semi-final, and then the final against crews from other countries with similar ambition. This hurdle they clear famously, coming second in their heat to East Germany, thus giving them a berth in the semi-final. Sam Patton and Malcolm Batten represent Australia in the coxless pair. However, their official position is emergencies for the Australian 8, ready to step in at a moment's notice. Meanwhile, the Australian 8 storm home in their heat just behind the gold medal favourites West Germany. Their good rowing continues into the semi-final, where they come second to Great Britain, thus giving them a lane in the final of the Olympic men's eights. For Tommy Keller, the president of FISA, is to keep an eye on the smooth running of this regatta. He also has the privilege of following any race of his choice, one of which is the semi-final of the quadruple scull, a vital race for Australia if it's to reach the final. Unexpected wind and weather conditions postponed the semi-final for 6 hours, but by early evening, the Han River Regatta course is perfect for excellent racing. Stroke of the quadruple scull, Peter Anthony.
The semi-final at the Olympic Games was the most exciting and enjoyable race for me, in that we had to qualify in the first three, but for the majority of the race we were lying either fourth or fifth. So we had to get past Czechoslovakia and Poland, which only happened at the end of the race. So it was a very satisfying result in that we got third and qualified for the final.
Hamish McGlashan, the emergency sculler for the quad scull, is a big-time performer. And so it wasn't surprising when he wiped his brow and surveyed the 2,000-metre stretch of water in front of him that this winner of the Diamond Sculls of the Henley Royal Regatta on the Thames would end up Australia's best competitor by coming fourth in the final of the Olympic single scull, only 3 seconds behind the New Zealand bronze medalist. For the other two crews, the 8 and the quad scull, the 2-day wait for their finals must seem like a lifetime. In the world of competitive sport, this Korean gentleman of the 20th century, host of the 24th Olympiad, must sometimes wonder what it all means. For the Australian 8, used to high-pressure racing, the day of the final sees them relaxed and in good spirits. The quad scull draws station number 1, which is a disadvantage because the slight crosswind favours the far side, station 6. Nevertheless, they're not far off the action and come in 5th with the Italians taking the gold medal.
The 8 also draws Station 1 and comes in 5th, 9 seconds behind West Germany, with Russia 2nd and the United States of America 3rd.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes racing on the program today. We hope to see you all again here tomorrow.